The street was quiet when the black car rolled to a stop in front of a small, peeling blue house. It was late. The moon was thin like a smile that did not reach the eyes. The car door opened and a tall man in a dark coat stepped out, holding a silver envelope. He walked up the short steps and knocked, 3 slow knocks that sounded like a drum inside the tiny living room. Behind the door, a 17-year-old boy pressed his palm to the wood. He could feel the knock in his bones. The man on the porch spoke without raising his voice. "Are you Caleb Reed?" he asked. Caleb looked at his mother. She looked back, worried and tired. The man held up the silver envelope. "This is because of what you did last night." He turned his wrist and the porch light caught a gold watch. From somewhere down the street, a neighbor whispered, "That's him. That's the millionaire." Caleb swallowed hard. The man leaned closer, eyes kind but sharp. "Before I hand this to you, I need to know one thing," he said. "If you had to choose again, would you still give away your meal? Would you give your last meal to 2 hungry strangers if your family had nothing at home? Comment yes or no, and tell us where you're watching from." Caleb Reed was the kind of boy who moved like a quiet wind through a room. He was tall, slim, and always a little hungry. He lived with his mom Ruth and his little sister Kayla in that peeling blue house at the edge of town. He worked at a small diner called Patty's Place, washing dishes for $8 an hour. The sink was usually full of plates with dried sauce and forks stuck in clumps of rice. His hands were always wet, his shirt always damp, and his stomach always making small, angry noises near closing time. Miss Patty, the owner, kept a radio on a shelf. It played old songs that sounded like sunshine that had lost its color. When the bell above the door rang, Caleb peeked from the kitchen to see who had come in. Most nights it was delivery guys, night shift nurses, the tired, the worried, the rushing. People with stories like heavy bags on their backs. On that night business was slow. The clock above the counter ticked loud. Outside, wind brushed the street like a broom. Inside, the fryers hissed. Caleb could smell onions and old coffee. His mom had texted earlier, "Got Kayla to bed. Don't worry about milk. We'll make do." Make do meant hot water with a spoon of sugar and the last bread slice cut in 3. It meant asking the landlord for 1 more week. It meant counting every coin twice and then counting the air. Caleb's staff meal was a simple plate he got at the end of his shift. A chicken sandwich, fries, and a small cup of soup. It was the secret promise that kept his hands moving even when his arms hurt. The idea that after the last plate, after the floor was mopped, he would sit on a short stool and eat slowly, as if time had become kind. Near closing, the glass door opened with a small cry. An old couple shuffled in. The man wore a coat that had seen many winters. The woman's scarf was neat but thinned at the edges. They moved like leaves moved by a soft wind, together, always close. Miss Patty looked up. "Kitchen's closing soon," she said. The woman nodded. They sat at the end of the counter and leaned into each other as if the stools were cold and love was the only heat. Caleb watched from the sink. He saw the old man take out a small plastic coin purse. He poured a little mountain of coins onto the counter and began to count with slow fingers. The old woman smiled at him, but her eyes looked tired. They spoke in low voices. After a while, the old man pushed half the coins back into the purse and left the rest on the counter like an apology. Miss Patty walked over with a half smile. "What can I get you?" she asked. The old woman looked at the menu on the wall. "What can we share for this?" the old man asked, tapping the coins. Miss Patty's smile slid a bit. "Maybe a small soup," she said kindly. "1 bowl. I'll bring extra spoons." The old woman nodded quickly, the kind of nod people do when they are trying to pretend they are not sad. Caleb felt something pinch behind his ribs. It felt like a hand squeezing his heart. He looked at the clock. 10 minutes to close. His staff meal would be ready soon, freshly made, hot, enough for a boy who had skipped breakfast and lunch to stretch the money. He looked down at his hands, wet, red at the knuckles, then back at the old couple. The woman shivered. He thought of his mom at home pretending not to be hungry, that he thought of Kayla sleeping with her arms around a pillow as if it were a teddy bear. He thought of how hunger sits inside the body like a small wolf with patient eyes. He walked to the kitchen pass and spoke to the short order cook, Manny. "Hey," Caleb said, keeping his voice steady. "Can you switch my staff meal?" Manny frowned. "What?" "Make my chicken sandwich, fries, and a big bowl of soup," Caleb said. He glanced at the old couple. "Table 1. But put it on my meal, not on the ticket." Manny stared. "You serious, kid?" Caleb nodded. "I'm sure." Manny shook his head, but he started to cook. "You're a soft one," he muttered. "Soft is expensive." When the food was ready, Manny slid the plates to the pass. Golden fries steamed like small chimneys. The soup was a bigger bowl, thick with noodles and chicken. Caleb carried the tray to the counter. "Here you go," he said, placing the plates gently in front of the old couple. The old woman's mouth opened a little. The old man looked confused. "We didn't order this," he said. Caleb smiled. "You did not," he said softly. "But I did." The old woman's eyes watered. "No, son, no," she whispered. "You're just a boy. Keep your meal." Caleb shook his head. "I'm not that hungry," he lied. "Please, share it. It would make me happy." Miss Patty watched from the register, one eyebrow high. The old man took a spoon and held it with both hands to keep it from shaking. He tasted the soup like a person tastes the first day of sun after a long rain. The old woman broke the sandwich and gave him the bigger half. They ate slowly, and every bite became a secret prayer. The old woman smiled at Caleb, and for a second, the diner felt warm as summer. When they finished, the old man reached for the coins on the counter. He pushed them toward Caleb. "Please," he said, "for your kindness." Caleb covered the coins with his palm and pushed them back. "Please keep it," he said. "You might need it tomorrow." The old man's eyes held his. Something passed between them, something quiet, like the moment before a storm when all the leaves lift their faces to the sky. Miss Patty cleared her throat. "Caleb," she said, "back to the sink." Her voice was not sharp, but it had an edge. Caleb went. He washed the last pans. He wiped the counters. He took out the trash to the back alley and stood there for a while under the weak light. He put his head back and closed his eyes. The night pressed cool hands to his face. He could smell the city, old rain, hot oil, someone's laundry soap, a little hope. When he came back inside, the couple was gone. On the counter lay the empty soup bowl, the plate, and a small folded napkin. Caleb picked up the napkin. A message was written in small, careful letters. "Thank you. When kindness knocks, doors open." He smiled at the words. He slipped the napkin into his pocket like a treasure. Then he finished the floor and turned off the lights. The old couple's joy rose like steam from the soup, and for a moment, Caleb felt bigger than his hunger. He felt like he had muscles no gym could build. He said goodnight to Miss Patty. She looked at him a long time. "That was sweet," she said quietly. "But don't make a habit of it. You can't pour from an empty cup." Caleb nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He knew she was not cruel. She had seen too many soft hearts grow hard from starvation. Caleb walked home in the cold. The streetlights were thin and far apart. The wind slid under his jacket. He counted the dollars in his head. Rent, electric, bus fare for school, a new notebook for Kayla. He would skip his staff meal again tomorrow. Maybe Friday too. He could make it a game in his head. How long could he go before his stomach's growl got a name? At home, the living room smelled like soap and clean floor. His mom had folded shirts into neat piles even though the shirts were old. Kayla had made a drawing of their house with a big sun. She had written, "We live in a bright place." The bright made Caleb smile. He put the napkin with the message inside a small jar where he kept 3 coins and 1 marble. His mom touched his arm. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm okay," he said. "We'll be okay." She nodded, trusting him more than he trusted himself. The next morning, the landlord's note was tucked under the door. Rent due in 3 days. No more extensions. His mom read it and looked away. "I'll call him," she said. Caleb shook his head. "I'll find more hours." He texted Miss Patty, "Can I come early?" She typed back, "We'll see. Busy later. Come after school." At school, a counselor called Caleb in. "You're doing well," she said. "Your grades are steady." He nodded, not wanting to explain how he did homework at the back table of the diner between dish loads. She handed him a list of scholarships. "Try these," she said. "Deadline's soon." He thanked her. He read the list during lunch while the smell of pizza filled the cafeteria and his stomach sang a sad song. After school, Caleb headed to the diner. A group of teens laughed outside a bakery. One boy bit into a pastry and stuffed the rest into his pocket, for later. Caleb kept walking. The sky was a flat gray, and the wind pushed him like a hand. At the diner, Miss Patty was already moving fast, her hair tied up in a tight bun. "Good, you're early," she said. "We're slammed. The college is doing a thing." He tied his apron. He washed, he wiped, he carried. The sink was a mountain and he was a climber with no rope. Around 7, a man in a dark coat sat at the corner booth. He had gentle eyes and a quiet way of looking at people. He did not order right away. He watched the room like a teacher watches a noisy class. When Miss Patty went to take his order, he smiled and asked for black coffee. He sipped it slow, as if each sip told him a secret. Near closing time, Miss Patty pulled Caleb aside. "A man asked about you," she said, her voice low. "Says he saw something last night." Caleb's heart began to hop like a rabbit. "What do you mean?" Miss Patty nodded toward the corner. The man in the dark coat was gone. On the table lay a receipt and a note. Miss Patty handed it to Caleb. The handwriting was the same careful letters as the napkin. "When kindness knocks, doors open," it said again. Underneath, a line, "Tomorrow night after 9. Be home." The next night was colder. The moon was thinner, like a nail clipping in the sky. Caleb's mom made tea in a chipped cup. Kayla did homework on the floor, tongue pressed to her lip in deep focus. The house was a quiet ship on a gray sea. Caleb checked the time every few minutes, pretending not to care. 9 came and went. At 9:15, the street outside hummed with a car that did not sound like any car on their block. Caleb peeped through the curtain. "A long car," she whispered. "Like in movies." The black car stopped. The porch light flicked on by itself as if it had been asked to do a job. The man in the dark coat stepped out. He was not old, not young, somewhere in that special place where people look strong and tired at the same time. He walked like a person who knew he would not trip. He carried the silver envelope with care, not like paper but like something that was alive. He knocked, and the knock rolled through the little house like thunder that had lost its way. Caleb stood, every muscle strung tight. His mom put a hand on his shoulder. "I'm here," she whispered. He opened the door. The cold slipped in like a curious cat. The man looked at Caleb for a long second, as if measuring the space around his name. "Are you Caleb Reed?" he asked. "Yes," Caleb said. "I am." The man lifted the envelope. "I'm Miles Turner," he said. The name felt like a dropped coin on the porch. Neighbors cracked their curtains. Someone took a small video on their phone. Miles Turner was the man from the business magazine at the library, the one who built 3 companies from a tiny office and a stubborn heart. Miles Turner's eyes softened. "Last night you gave your dinner to 2 strangers," he said. "You did not know them. You did not ask for thanks." Caleb's mouth went dry. "Yes," he said. "They looked hungry." Miles nodded. "They were." He paused, like a person reaching for the right page in a book. "They were also my parents." The porch light buzzed. Somewhere a dog barked and then stopped as if it remembered its manners. Caleb blinked. Kayla's pencil dropped to the floor inside the house. His mom's hand pressed harder on his shoulder. Miles held up the envelope. "My father told me about you," he said. "He told me about your hands, your eyes, the way you push the coins back. He said, when kindness knocks, doors open. He said I should find you." He took a slow breath and lowered his voice, as if he were telling a secret meant for only 2 people. "This envelope holds a choice," he said. "It may hold a door." He smiled a little. "But before I hand it to you, I need to hear your answer with my own ears." He leaned forward, and the porch seemed to tilt toward his words. "If you had to choose again, would you still give away your meal?" Caleb thought of the sink and the radio and the way the old woman's eyes had brightened like a light turned on in a small room. He thought of his mother's thin hands, the rent note, the 3 coins in the jar, the napkin folded like a promise. He opened his mouth, but a new sound cut through the night like a blade from the end of the street. An older man in a heavy coat, face familiar in a way Caleb could not place, was jogging toward the house, calling, "Miles. Wait." Behind him, a second black car turned the corner, headlights bright, engine hot. The second car braked too hard and skidded against the curb. 2 figures stepped out fast, suits sharp, eyes scanning. The neighbors gasped. Kayla ran to the door. Caleb's mom pulled her back gently. The first older man reached the porch and grabbed Miles's arm. "You can't," he said, breathless. "You can't give him that yet." Miles's jaw tightened. "Dad," he said, "it's his to decide. You told me yourself." The older man shook his head, eyes wet, voice breaking. "I told you he was kind," he said. "I didn't tell you the rest." The second car's doors shut at the same time, 2 soft thuds like the closing of a book. One of the suited men spoke into a small earpiece. The other carried a dark, flat case that looked heavy enough to pull your arm down. "Mr. Turner," he called, "we should go inside. Now." Miles did not move. He looked at Caleb as if the answer to a map was written on the boy's face. "Inside," repeated the suited man, sharper. "There's been an issue." He glanced at the older man, Miles's father, then at the silver envelope, then at Caleb. "Sir," he said lower now, "it may not be safe to hand that over out here." Caleb's heart banged against his chest, fast and loud. Miles's father shook his head again and whispered, "Son, tell him about the test." Miles lifted the envelope halfway and froze, eyes still on Caleb. The porch light flickered once, twice, and then burned steady. The neighbors around them were silent, leaning forward from the shadows like a crowd at the edge of a cliff. "Test?" Caleb asked, voice small. "What test?" Miles Turner's face changed from gentle to serious, from kind to careful. He held the silver envelope just beyond Caleb's reach. "Before I give you this," he said quietly, "I have to tell you something that might break your trust, or make it unbreakable." He nodded to the suited men who stepped closer. "And once you hear it," he said, "you may never look at last night the same way again." The wind rose. Somewhere a door banged. The older man, Miles's father, closed his eyes as if bracing for a wave. Caleb swallowed and lifted his chin, as if he could stand taller with only air. "Tell me," he said. "Tell me now." Miles opened his mouth to speak, and a loud crash came from the second car's trunk, as if something inside had moved on its own. Caleb stood on the porch with the cold night brushing his cheeks while the neighbors whispered like leaves, and the tall man, Miles Turner, held the silver envelope as if it were a lamp made of paper. The second car had made a worrying sound a moment ago, but when the men in neat coats checked it again, the only thing inside was a stack of boxes that had slid when the driver parked too close to the curb. One box lid had popped open and Caleb could see the bright edges of grocery packages, bags of rice, tins of milk, cornflakes, and a row of apples shining in the poor light like small red moons. No fear. No chase. No shout. The night sighed and calmed. Kayla relaxed her tight grip on their mother's skirt, and their mother, Ruth, let out the breath she had been holding. Miles looked a little sorry about the scare and said in a soft voice, "I'm sorry we startled everyone. Nothing is wrong. We only brought too many boxes and not enough hands." The neighbors laughed quietly with the gentle relief people feel when thunder turns out to be a passing truck. Someone called, "So it's just food?" and one of the neat-coated helpers lifted a bag of rice in answer and smiled. Caleb kept his eyes on the envelope and also on Miles's face, searching for truth the way you search for something small on a dark floor with your fingers. Miles's father, a gray-haired man with warm eyes, stepped closer and spoke carefully, not like a man making a speech but like a grandfather telling a story one line at a time. "Son, I want to say this plainly so you can hold it in your hands. Last night at the diner, my wife and I were very hungry. We could have called a driver. We could have used a card. But we chose to go as we were, with only coins. Not to trick you. To meet you as many people move through the world, simple, quiet, unseen, and to see who would see us. You did." Caleb felt something loosen in his chest, like a knot learning how to become a ribbon. "So it was a test," he said, not angry now, only making sure. Miles nodded. "It was a test of my promise, not of your worth. I promised my parents," he said, glancing back at the gray-haired man who was smiling softly, "that if we ever found a young person who gave without counting, we would put our weight behind him and let his kindness grow roots." Kayla peeked past the door frame, her eyes shining. "Are the apples for us?" she asked in a small voice that made even the neighbors smile. "Yes, little one," Miles said, kneeling to her height as if kneeling was simply the right way to speak to joy. "But not just apples." He pointed at the boxes in the car. "There are notebooks for school, flour and sugar for hot pancakes, warm blankets, a small heater, and a few surprises I hope you'll like." Kayla clapped once and hid her face shyly behind her mother. Ruth's hand settled on Caleb's shoulder again. It felt like a blessing. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Then don't say anything yet," the gray-haired man replied kindly. "Let us bring the boxes inside first. Words can walk after." They carried the boxes into the small living room, which smelled faintly of soap and quiet. The neighbors stayed on the sidewalk, waving goodnight one by one as the night folded its arms around the street again. The helpers placed bags on the cleared table and on the old armchair with the soft dent in the middle. Kayla kept finding small treasures, colored pencils, a brand new math set in a tin, a pen that clicked like a tiny drum. She squealed at the cornflakes and hugged the box as though it were a long-lost friend. Ruth's eyes were wet but peaceful, like rain on a calm river. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you." She kept thanking until the word turned into a smile that could not be contained by just her mouth. It shone from her whole face. When the boxes were set down and the helpers stepped back to give the small family space to breathe, Miles placed the silver envelope on the table without pushing it, the way you set bread near a hungry person but let them choose when to eat. "Before you open this," he said, "I want to tell you something important so that nothing inside feels heavy in the wrong way." He paused and took in the room. its neatness, the small jar by the lamp holding 3 coins and a marble, the drawing of a house with a bright sun that lay on the floor by Kayla's shoe. My mother and father have a habit, he went on with a little smile. On their wedding anniversary every year they do something quiet for someone else. Last night was their anniversary. The diner with coins was their idea. And what they found was you. The gray-haired man laughed softly and rubbed his thumb over his wedding ring. We wanted to end the day the way we began our life together, by sharing one plate. He looked at Caleb with a proud kind of wonder. And you brought the plate. Caleb pressed his lips together because sometimes joy leaks out when you speak, and he wanted to hold it a little longer. He looked at the jar by the lamp. The folded napkin was there, a little ship of paper on a small sea of glass. When kindness knocks, doors open. He took it out and smoothed it on the table. You wrote this, he said to the older man. I did, the man replied. And I meant it. But doors are not just things that swing. They are promises too. If you walk through, you don't walk alone. He nodded at the envelope. That is a door. Ruth leaned forward, worry and hope sitting side by side in her eyes like 2 polite guests. I need to ask, she said gently, is anything expected from my son that will take him far from school or push him into rooms where he does not belong? He is good. He helps. He still needs to finish his studies. Miles's face softened. You are a good mother, he said. Your first question was for his care, not for money. I want to honor that. Nothing in this envelope will ask him to leave school. In fact, it will do the opposite. He opened a slim leather folder and slid out a single sheet. This is a scholarship we created last year. It pays for school fees, textbooks, and a monthly stipend for food and transport. It also comes with a mentor who meets once a week to help with homework and planning. If you accept, it begins right away. Caleb's mouth parted. He looked from the paper to his mother and then to Kayla, who had already begun sorting the colored pencils in a perfect rainbow. Ruth's hands touched the edge of the table as if to make sure the table was still real. A scholarship, she breathed. Now, Miles said. And there is more, but the scholarship is the heart. The rest is just arms to hug the heart. He placed a small, simple phone on the table. This phone is paid for the next 2 years. Only 3 numbers are saved. Mine, your mentor's, and the office that handles the stipend. No sales, no tricks. He hesitated, then placed a small key next to the phone, tied with a piece of blue ribbon. And this is only if your mother wants it. It is a key to a safe storage unit nearby that holds a brand new bed for Kayla, a desk for Caleb, and a quiet chair for your mom to rest in. Take them when you are ready. If that is too much, say no, and we will take the key back and use it for someone else. Steps. Ruth put a hand to her mouth. She did not cry. She did not shout. She closed her eyes and said, Thank you, God, the way a person says thank you to the first light after a long storm. Then she opened them and looked at her son. What do you feel in your heart? She asked. Caleb looked at the napkin. He looked at the jar. He thought of the way the old couple had shared the sandwich, and how the woman had given her husband the bigger half without thinking, the way birds give each other crumbs in winter. I feel careful, he said, choosing the word like a stone that would not sink. And happy. And scared that I will make the wrong step. Miles's father smiled. Then make a small step first, he said. The right road is made of small steps. Kayla pushed the apple box toward her brother. Eat one, she said. Just to begin. Caleb laughed softly and did as told, because sometimes the youngest person in the room is the best teacher. The apple was cold and sweet and tasted like the first day of a new year. He swallowed and felt courage go down with the juice. Then he touched the envelope at last. The paper was thick and smooth. He slid a finger under the flap and paused, his eyes finding his mother's face. She nodded. He opened it. Inside were 3 things: a letter with his name written in a tidy hand, a slim card, and a small photograph. The photograph showed a long, sunny table under a grapevine. At the table sat the old couple from the diner, Miles's parents, smiling with crumbs on their lips and light in their eyes. Between them, an empty chair. On the back of the photo, someone had written, "This chair is waiting for you." Caleb blinked hard. He set the photo down and unfolded the letter. He read the first line silently and then out loud because some lines are too big to keep inside only one head. Dear Caleb, last night you fed us. Please let us help feed your days. He swallowed and read on. The letter explained the scholarship, the mentor, the times for meeting, the way the stipend would arrive every month like a quiet train. It also invited him and his family to breakfast on Saturday in a small garden behind a bakery where the old woman liked to eat warm rolls with honey. No suits, the letter said near the end, just sweaters and stories. Caleb smiled at that. He could see the garden in his mind, see the chair, see the steam from the cups, see his mother laughing without a wrinkle of worry on her forehead. The slim card was a simple bank card with his name already printed. He touched the letters to make sure they would not rub off. The gray-haired man cleared his throat softly. "It has enough for this month's food and bills," he said. "We did not ask anyone else for permission. This is between us and you. If you feel uncomfortable, we can change the method. We can send grocery vouchers instead, or deliver items quietly so no one talks. We want your peace as much as your progress." Ruth's eyes warmed. "You are very thoughtful," she said. "Thank you for thinking of dignity." They poured tea. Not the fancy tea from fancy tins, but the same simple tea Ruth always made, now with enough sugar for everyone. Miles and his father accepted their cups with both hands, and for a moment the small living room felt like a place where good things were born. They sipped and talked in soft voices. Miles asked Caleb about school. Caleb told him about the counselor with the scholarship list and about doing homework at the diner, about trying to solve a geometry proof while the radio played a song with too many trumpets. Miles laughed, not at him but with him, and shared how he had once studied on a bus with a pocket flashlight because the library closed early and his own home had too many people talking all at once. The room loosened into easy smiles. Kayla drew a garden with a long table and wrote "Saturday breakfast" in careful letters at the top of the page. When it was time to leave, the helpers carried the last boxes to the kitchen and said good night. The street was quiet again, the kind of quiet that tucks you in. Miles stood by the door and looked at the napkin one more time. "Keep that," he said. "It's true." The gray-haired man reached into his coat and handed Caleb a tiny envelope within the bigger one. "A small note for your mother," he said gently. "It's only a few words." Ruth opened it later and found a line that made her lean against the wall and smile with her whole face. "You raised a good son. Let us stand with him while he keeps rising." They moved toward the door, and Miles reminded Caleb about Saturday breakfast, about the mentor call on Friday, about calling if anything felt confusing. Caleb promised. He felt light and steady at the same time, like a kite with a good string. Miles placed his hand over his heart in a simple goodbye and stepped out onto the porch. The cold brushed in and then away. The two men in neat coats waited by the car, talking softly about the safest way to stack apples. The gray-haired man put on his hat and smiled at Kayla. "Save me a cornflake," he said, and she nodded seriously as if agreeing to guard a treasure. Then, just as Miles reached for the car door, a small sound came from the street end. Not a crash, not a shout. A gentle bell like the bell on a bakery door when someone kind walks in. Everyone turned. Walking slowly toward the house was the old woman from the diner, Miles's mother, wearing a warm scarf and carrying a round pie wrapped in a cloth. Her cheeks were pink from the night air, and her eyes were bright in the porch light as she called, "I could not sit still. I baked. May I come in?" She glanced at Caleb with a shy smile, as if asking permission to enter his life as well as his living room. Behind her, the sky had cleared, and a thin sprinkle of stars had gathered like sugar on dark bread. Caleb's heart jumped the way hearts do when a wish pushes the door open before you can knock. He looked at his mother, she smiled and nodded. He looked at Kayla, she was already clearing a space on the table for plates. He looked back at the old woman, at the pie, at the small steam floating from under the cloth like a tiny cloud that had lost its way and come home. The gray-haired man whispered, "Your chair is waiting too," and nodded toward the single empty seat at the table. Caleb reached for the door to let her in, and stopped because tucked under the pie cloth was another small envelope with his name on it and a single sentence showing through, written in that same careful hand. "Caleb, there is one more thing you should know about last night." Caleb's hand hovered on the doorknob, the warm pie sending its sweet smell through the night. The old woman, Miles's mother, stood on the porch with her scarf fluttering in the soft wind. She carried the pie carefully, like it was more than food, like it was a gift that held words inside. Her smile was gentle, but Caleb's eyes had already caught the corner of the small envelope tucked under the cloth. His name was written on it in the same neat handwriting that had been on the napkin from the diner, steady, clear, and honest. For a moment time paused. Kayla clapped her hands and bounced, urging him to open the door fully. Ruth nodded from behind, her face glowing with gratitude. Caleb opened the door wide and the old woman stepped in. The warmth of the little house seemed to hug her. She placed the pie on the table and kissed Ruth lightly on both cheeks as if they had known each other for years. Then she bent down and hugged Kayla, whispering something that made the little girl laugh. Caleb waited, his eyes fixed on the envelope. At last, the woman lifted it from under the cloth and handed it to him. "This," she said softly, "is something I wanted to tell you myself, but I was afraid it might be too much to carry in one night. Then I thought, you have carried heavier things already." Caleb's fingers trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a single page folded twice. He smoothed it out carefully and read the words. "Caleb, when we sat at the counter that night, we were not only hungry in our bodies. We were hungry in our hearts. My husband and I have more than enough money, but sometimes wealth builds walls instead of bridges. We wanted to know if there were still young people who see the invisible. You gave us your meal, but more than that, you gave us hope. We decided that night, before even leaving the diner, that you are the one we want to stand beside for the future. But here is the truth I want you to know. You are not the first we tested. Others came before you. Some turned their faces away. Some gave only half. Some mocked us. You are the first who gave all without asking. That is why we chose you. Not as charity, but as family." Caleb looked up, stunned. "Family?" he whispered. The old woman smiled, her eyes glistening. "Yes, family. If you will allow it." The room went quiet. Ruth pressed her hands together, overwhelmed. Kayla's mouth dropped open and she whispered loudly, "Does that mean we can go to their house for Christmas?" The old woman chuckled, a sound like warm bells, and nodded. "Yes, if your mother agrees." Miles stepped forward, his voice steady. "This was never about a scholarship alone. My parents and I have long looked for someone who could help us shape the next chapter of what we are building. We are setting up a foundation, not just to give money but to give opportunities, schools, libraries, safe homes. We need people at the heart of it who know what hunger feels like, who know what it is to choose kindness when it costs something. We don't want businessmen who only know numbers. We want people like you, Caleb. And this invitation is not for you alone, it is for your family too." Ruth gasped quietly. She looked around the room, her eyes landing on the boxes of food, on the tidy piles of groceries, on Kayla's drawing of a bright sun. She thought of the rent note still lying folded on the shelf, and of the nights she had pretended she wasn't hungry so her children could eat. "You're saying," she asked slowly, "that you don't just want to help us for a season, but for life?" Miles's father nodded, his face soft. "Yes, we want to walk with you. Your son has already proven who he is, and we believe in him." Caleb's head spun. The word family echoed in his ears. He thought of the times he had wished for an uncle who could advise him, a grandfather who could tell him stories, a friend who could say, "I see you." And here they were, offering not just money, not just food, but belonging. He felt tears rise and he let them come, hot and real, rolling down his face in front of everyone. He didn't hide them. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. The old woman touched his cheek. "Then don't say anything now. Just eat some pie with us and let the words come later." They sat at the table, cutting the pie into warm slices. The scent of apples and cinnamon filled the room, mixing with the smell of tea already brewing. Kayla giggled when the filling dripped onto her fingers. Miles laughed softly, watching her, and Ruth shook her head with a smile she had not worn in years. Caleb ate his slice slowly, savoring not only the taste but the sweetness of the moment, the feeling that their small living room was no longer poor, it was rich with love. As they ate, Miles began to talk about the foundation. "We have a plan," he explained. "We want to build 10 community centers in different towns, each with a library, a kitchen, and a study space. We want young leaders to grow there. And I want you, Caleb, to be one of the first to help us shape how it works. You can tell us what people like your family really need, not what rich men think they need." Caleb nodded slowly, the weight of the offer settling on him. "But I'm only 17, he said. Miles smiled. "That's exactly why. You are close enough to remember what it feels like. That memory is gold. Don't ever lose it." The hours slipped by like gentle waves. They shared stories. Ruth spoke about raising Caleb and Kayla alone after their father passed, about working 2 jobs and still falling short. Miles's parents shared stories about their early years, about nights when they too had been hungry but had always chosen to share. Kayla fell asleep in her mother's lap, the colored pencils scattered around her like bright sticks of candy. Finally, Miles stood, placing his hand on Caleb's shoulder. "I will not pressure you," he said. "Think about it. Read the letter again tomorrow. Call me when your heart is ready. Whatever you choose, we will still help with school. But if you step into this with us, you will not just receive help, you will help shape the help given to thousands of others." Caleb looked up, his voice quiet but steady. "I think my heart is ready now." The old woman beamed, her eyes glistening. "Then let us begin with breakfast on Saturday. There will be an empty chair waiting for you and we will fill it with stories, not tests." They left into the night, the car's taillights glowing like 2 red lanterns. The street grew still again, but the Reed house glowed with a new kind of light. Ruth tucked Kayla into bed, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "The world is changing, my little one." Then she went to her room, leaving Caleb alone at the table. He took the napkin from the jar again, the words standing firm. "When kindness knocks, doors open." He smoothed it carefully and placed it beside the letter. For the first time, he believed the door that had opened would not close again. The next morning, he woke early and went outside. The sky was soft gray, the air crisp. Neighbors waved to him differently now, with curiosity, with kindness. He smiled back. In his pocket, the envelope rested like a promise. He walked to the diner for his shift, his steps lighter than before. Miss Patty looked at him closely when he arrived. "Something's different," she said. Caleb grinned. "Maybe everything." When his shift ended, he did not wait for a staff meal. Instead, he bought 2 sandwiches with his own small money and stepped outside. An old man sat on the bench near the bus stop, holding a sign that read, "Hungry, please help." Caleb walked straight over and handed him 1 sandwich. "Here," he said. The man looked up, surprised. Caleb smiled. "I'm not testing you. I just want you to eat." The man blinked, then took the sandwich with shaking hands. Caleb sat beside him, eating his own. They chewed in silence, the city buzzing around them. And in that small act, Caleb knew this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. And so it ended not with a fight, not with a chase, but with a table, a chair, and a boy who learned that giving away your meal could feed you more than food ever could. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Thank you for watching. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments so I can shout you out in the next episode.